Which Florida Gators need to step up for the team to be successful in these final 5 games of the season?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free, right as in the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Thursday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. No crossover Thursday today because get this, Florida Gators don't play a game this week. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You're going to love that during NBA season. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And like I said, we're talking about which Florida Gators need to step up for the team to be successful, okay? And so this isn't just any random Florida Gator. This is, of course, where we're going to start, right? DJ Lagway. And here's the thing. I am not implying that he hasn't played well. I think he's played very well, especially considering he's a true freshman that in his first SEC start last week threw for over 250 yards, one pick, which was tip drilled, played pretty well. Took care of the football, running the ball, took care of the football, throwing the ball, right? And I will say another thing. He's got 5 picks on the year, but I'd say maybe the Tennessee one is the only one that I look at and I say, oh, that was definitely his fault. Everything else I could at least go, maybe not his fault. But that one, Tennessee one, definitely his fault. Everything else, I go, maybe it wasn't his fault. Maybe it was. But he's played very well. I will say that. I don't think he played particularly well against Texas A&M. Against Mississippi State, everybody played well. Against UCF, everybody played well. Against Tennessee, he played well. He led this team back, right? Against Kentucky, he played well. My thing now is, because we've talked about this before, right? The deep ball is there. He is one of the best deep ball throwers in the country right now. Obviously, his sample size is smaller. But for anybody with a sample size of his size or more, he's the best in the country. Okay, and so especially with the frequency at which he throws that deep ball, sample size won't be an issue for much longer. Something tells me about that one, right? So I do think that you can look at the deep ball and say, hey, he's one of the best deep ball throwers in the country right now, just on a per throw basis. He's right there. He's completing a very high percent of the deep ball passes. He's being aggressive in the smartest way. That's one of the things that, for me, looking at him play right now, is like, this kid doesn't look like a freshman, is that he's taking the deep shots when they're smart to take. And that's an impressive thing that a lot of quarterbacks don't do. A lot of good quarterbacks don't even do it at that rate, where they go, hey, I've got an Aiden Mizell. I've got a Tank Hawkins. I've got an Elijah Badger. I've got someone that I trust to come down with this ball running one-on-one. I think I can make this throw, and with given what's in front of me and in terms of protection, in terms of if I can step into the throw a little bit, whatever it may be, I think I can make this throw. Damn it, I'm going to make it. And I've said it before, he's got that approach from a quarterback perspective of if he's even, he's leaving. And with a lot of guys like an Aiden Mizell, where it's like, hey, if you're a corner and you're even with him, he's going to sprint and you lose. You lose that one. He's running past you. And DJ Lagway has that mentality, and that's a fantastic mentality to have, okay? I want to make that clear. I am not knocking DJ Lagway's play at all. The deep ball is phenomenal. He's running the football and sliding and getting out of bounds, and that's smart football. That's winning football, okay? That's what that is. I realize I keep saying smart football. I keep saying, you got to protect yourself, your QB1. That's winning football. You pick up a first down with your legs, you slide. You pick up a first down, you get out of bounds. You do those things, and it's successful, and you help your team win football games because of it. He's playing smart football. I'm not super upset with every now and then taking an indirect hit. I don't want my quarterback really going head up unless it's we need to get this first down. We need to do this. I'd prefer you just play it safe, get out there, okay? Your QB1, be protected. All that's to say, as good as he's played, as well as he's played, when you see Georgia next week, when you see Texas the week after that, and I'm not going to say LSU because LSU is going to go single high a bit and you should be able to attack them. But when you see Georgia and Texas, they're going to go too high against you. They're going to try to make you throw underneath because that's what you can do with a lot of these younger quarterbacks that like throwing the deep ball is you can kind of go, hey, we're going to give you the underneath ball. And if you don't take it, then we're going to get interceptions. We're going to force 3 and outs. We're going to force punts. We're going to do whatever it is. But that's what a lot of these quarterbacks do. Or that's what a lot of these defenses do to younger quarterbacks that are really aggressive throwing the ball. That's what they want to do. They go, hey, we're going to play too high and we'll give you underneath, but you've got to be willing to take it. And in the limited sample size, DJ Lagway hasn't exactly been willing to take that underneath pass. And we saw this even a few years ago with Patrick Mahomes, right? There was, I think it was like 2020 or 2021, where he was throwing picks. He was getting bailed out with penalties, not throwing picks, whatever it was. And the shift was basically every defense went, hey, we're going to play too high against you. And if you want to take those shots, take those shots. And Patrick Mahomes was like, oh, I'm going to take those shots regardless because I've got a big arm. And eventually he started throwing more picks. Things got a little shaky. Of course, now they're winning Super Bowls. But you know what's changed drastically since that time when teams were like, hey, we're going to go too high and make you throw deep or make you throw underneath? He started taking the checkdowns. That's what it is. Patrick Mahomes' average depth of target has dropped by over 2 yards since then. Not because he's worse, because he's better. He's taking what's there when it's there. And when he wants to take a deep shot or when he thinks it's appropriate to take a deep shot, he's going to do that. But with a lot of teams, they're going to play too high and go, hey, go ahead, Mr. Cannon Arm, go ahead. You want to take that shot? You can take that shot. But we've got 2 safeties. We're playing quarters coverage. We've got 2 safeties and a corner on each side. Go ahead, take the shot, and we'll capitalize on it. So that's where I go, okay, that's the next thing I need to see. It's not something that he hasn't done fully. Like I said, sample size with him is very small for everything, good and bad. And so this isn't a complaint about DJ Lagway's play, but it's a note that he's the quarterback. It's the most important position in sports in terms of this one position indicates the team success or dictates team success. You need to step up in that area when you're facing a Georgia and a Texas. You're not facing Kentucky, which is a sound defense, a pretty good defense, but they're not Georgia. They're not Texas. I'm interested to see how LSU plays defense against him because I do think that DJ Lagway can take some deep shots against LSU, but that's weeks down the line, right? That's almost a month away. But when we look at the Georgia game and we look at Texas, they're going to try to force DJ Lagway to take what's underneath. And if he's not going to take what's underneath, they're probably going to walk away with an interception here and there. They're probably going to make some plays on their own that in an ideal world, you don't really see happen. Where again, if you're forcing that pass, things can be a little rough for you. We are about to flip to the defensive side for the remainder of the show. I'd also love to hear it if you've got any other suggestions or if you disagree with DJ Lagway. Let me know in the comments, or I mean, a lot of you guys are Locked On Gators insiders. You can feel free to shoot me a message about it, and we can talk, we can fight, we can do whatever. But we'll talk about the defense next on Locked On Gators. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You will get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And I need to just revisit something from Tuesday night because that absolutely sucked. I don't know what's wrong with Mikal Bridges that he was like, you know what? I shot almost 40% from 3 each of the past 2 years. I'm going to change my form completely. I don't know what got into him, but I did bet on his threes because I figured, hey, he might have some open looks against Boston. He had open looks. He just bricked all of them. He shot 2 for 7 from 3, but he bricked most of them. And it was really ugly. And I lost a good bit of money on that game. Broke my heart. The Knicks doing Knicks things to start the season. Love to see it. FanDuel.com. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. I had to get that off my chest. I did because they've just been ruining my life for 28 years now, and I finally was like, you know what? I'm buying in again. Then they did that. But on the defensive side of the ball, there's, again, like I've said, there's players that need to step up. And in doing this, in having this experiment going through, there's also a element to it where I looked at guys and I went, you know what? We need to talk about players at premium positions, which are quarterback, hence why DJ Lagway is on here. Despite playing very well, needs to make sure that he's taking the next step against Georgia and Texas. But that's quarterback, receiver, offensive tackle, corner, and pass rusher. We're talking defense for the rest of the show, so you can kind of piece together which positions we're talking about. First off, we're talking about Devin Moore. This is another one where it's not necessarily saying he's playing poor. I don't think he's playing well this year. But I do think Devin Moore is also just an interesting case study because last year, and even, you can even go back to the year prior, and then this past offseason, we talked about Devin Moore, right? Everybody, Florida Gators fans in abundance, we're talking about Devin Moore saying when he's been healthy, he's been the best corner on the team. Because that was true for 2 reasons last year, okay? 1, he was playing really good football last year. 2, no other corner on the team was playing really good football last year. So we've been saying, hey, when he's healthy, Devin Moore's been the best corner on the team. And that's not false at all. I want to make that abundantly clear. That wasn't false at all last year. Because again, Jason Marshall Jr. was not playing well. Devin Moore was. There was always a risk that, hey, with a larger sample size, you're probably going to look worse at times, right? And Devin Moore, to this point this season, through these 6 games he's played, because don't forget, he did miss the Samford game. So through the 6 games that Devin Moore's played, and he got hurt 8 snaps into the Miami game. So he's really played 5 1/4 of games. He's played more snaps this season already than he played all of last year or all of the year prior by a pretty large margin. So he's played significantly more this year than in previous years. So yes, there was always going to be the expectation that he would look a little worse at times or look worse overall because he's out there more consistently. He's out there he's tired. He's running consistently. Absolutely, right? I don't think anybody's got to dispute that. That's just simple fact. When you have someone that's playing really well and then they play more snaps, regression to the mean's a thing. So it was always a risk that Devin Moore would play worse, and not that he's played poorly, but I don't think he's played to the level that many of us anticipated, even accounting for the drop-off with more snaps. Okay? Again, I don't think he's played poorly. I think the Kentucky game was easily his best game of the year. I mean, he had the pick. Great, right? So I don't think that anyone's really, hating how he's been playing lately. But he's had some moments. Mississippi State wasn't a great game for him. Again, Miami, he got hurt after allowing a completion in the very limited snaps. I think he was only in coverage for like 3 or 4, 5 times maybe before getting hurt against Miami. He had Texas A&M was not a pretty game for him. Mississippi State wasn't exactly a pretty game for him either. Tennessee wasn't a pretty game for any receiver on Tennessee, and part of that was because of Nico Iamaleava's struggles in that game. Part of it was good coverage, but there was, don't forget, a few deep balls that Nico just missed on against Florida. And then the Kentucky game lights out by the entire secondary. Devin Moore very much included. Again, had his pick. Great game. Just a near perfect game for him. However, in that game also, Jason Marshall Jr., who was playing lights effing out. Just that's the only way I can describe it. Lights effing out. Got injured. Not in a sling earlier this week, according to pictures that were posted from the charity events that they do, the Gator Made and Florida Victorious events that they do, which aren't really charity, but you get the point. The according to those events, he wasn't in a sling, and apparently that picture was taken on Sunday. So that's interesting. It could have been hey, he doesn't need to be in a sling, whatever it may be. But again, definitely possible that he's going to be out. So the expectation here for Devin Moore should be, hey, you replace Jason Marshall. Dijon Johnson replaces you. Jakeem Jackson replaces Dijon Johnson when Jakeem Jackson's back. Cormani McClain replaces Jakeem Jackson. And that's our 4. Because don't forget, Florida was running also with a 3-man corner rotation for a lot of this because Jason Marshall wasn't coming off the field. Jason Marshall is this year's Jordan Castell in terms of snaps played. Like last year was, hey, Jordan Castell is playing all the snaps. In 2023, Jordan Castell, who's not having a good year, played 660 of the 734 possible snaps. This year, Jason Marshall has played 447 snaps out of the 518, including getting injured against Kentucky. So he's missed 70 snaps, and that includes blowouts and the injury. Like that's the kind of game that we're talking about with Jason Marshall right now. He's been playing the most snaps, and he's been playing lights out while doing it. But again, now that he's presumably going to be banged up, it's a true next man up, right? It's a true Devin Moore, you replace Jason Marshall. Dijon, you replace Devin Moore. That should be the expectation. Okay? So for Devin Moore, he's the guy that has to step up on the outside. And I want to be honest here. Even if you wanted to look at it the other way of Dijon has to replace Jason Marshall, Devin Moore still has to step up. Like even if we don't go, hey, you're going from corner 2 to corner 1, still has to step up. Because this back stretch of the schedule is going to absolutely suck if you don't. Simple as that. Okay, so Devin Moore is the next guy who needs to step up. And we're going to stick on the defensive side of the football when we return next on Locked On Gators. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. And in fact, I need to find this. I need to find this play from the other day because I went off, and by the other day, I do mean Sunday football. It was a beautiful time. It was a great time. Loved it so much. And it cashed. Derrick Henry, more than 0.5 touchdowns. Happened. Baker Mayfield, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. Happened. Kyler Murray, more than 33.5 rushing yards. Wasn't happening until his 44-yard rushing touchdown. 40-ish. Might have been 44. Lamar Jackson, more than 227.5 passing yards. And boy, did he make it look easy. Boy, did he make it look easy. So you download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Okay? Prize Picks, run your game. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. To wrap up today's show, we are moving down from the secondary to the front 4, and we are talking about one TJ Searcy, who I have no problem admitting was very high on this year or this offseason. I don't think he's reached those expectations yet. He was the guy that we kind of looked at and we went, hey, he's going to be the next one to replace Princely, to be the next Florida Gators edge rusher, whatever it may be. Right now, he's basically dead even snap count with Jack Pyburn. slightly behind George Gums there. But TJ Searcy is a guy that I'm just going to be completely honest with. Again, I still think he's got all the physical tools to be really good. I think he will eventually be good. All that being said, I've been rather unimpressed with his work as a pass rusher. Here's the thing. I'm also unimpressed with Jack Pyburn as a pass rusher, but I don't think that's his skill set at all. I think Jack Pyburn is pretty perfectly content being like, hey, I'm here to stuff the run, and that's fine. And TJ Searcy is supposed to be the kind who's like, hey, I'm here to rush the passer. And I've been unimpressed with TJ Searcy to this point. I think George Gums has exceeded expectations. Tyrese Saps looked better than last year, although, again, he's fallen off since the beginning of the year. But specifically as a pass rusher, TJ Searcy has not been good enough this season so far. And even if, like, I don't care if you want to cut the film or look at the stats, however you watch it, however you want to look at it, you can look at the pressures he picked up against Miami, which were not exactly clean pressures, I guess we'll say. And by that, I mean, a lot of the pressures that Florida generated against Miami were strictly, hey, we're rushing 3, eventually someone's going to hit home. And TJ Searcy benefited from that as well. Everybody did on that. Just want to make that clear. Everyone did. TJ Searcy benefited from that. And I'm talking about if you're looking at the stats, that's the explanation for it. And then the Kentucky was just good. Like, Kentucky, he played well. Okay. I will give him that. Kentucky, he played well. But for much of this, I mean, let's look at the stats for a second. 3 pressures against Miami, which again benefited from the rush 3, drop 8. 1 pressure against Samford, benefited from not playing much because he didn't need to. No pressures against Texas A&M, which I'll chalk it. They were running the football. No pressures against Mississippi State. No pressures against UCF. No pressures against Tennessee. 3 pressures against Kentucky. Not good to go 4 weeks without a single pressure. Not good to be this late in the season and have 7 pressures, okay? Needs to get better. And also, and again, I mentioned this Monday, he played well against Kentucky, but I also mentioned against Kentucky that the edge was lost a few times. They broke contain, and TJ Searcy was, I guess, the guilty party in that sense of he broke contain as a pass rusher. He broke contain against counter, whatever the option was. He was on flying in, and a couple decent runs stemmed from it. So that's one of the areas where, hey, he's got to be better there. I will also say that you go back to the spring game and you go back to last year even, and I feel like we saw some pass rush moves that had genuine promise in them. I'm specifically talking about he had a nice long arm that he used, which if you're unfamiliar with pass rushing moves, the long arm is probably commonly mistaken for the bull rush, but they are different. The long arm is if I'm rushing against the, we'll say, right tackle in this case. I'm rushing against the right tackle. I put my right arm into his right shoulder, so my inside arm is on his outside shoulder, and I'm pushing him back. Okay? And I'm getting bent there. I'm pushing back, and that's the power move. You look at a Khalil Mack. Go watch any Khalil Mack game, and you will see him break out the long arm masterfully. He's got, in my opinion, the best long arm that I've seen since I've started evaluating players. I'm sure guys in the past have been amazing at it, but from the time I've started evaluating players to now, Khalil Mack has the best long arm I've ever seen and recognized and identified. Okay? We've also seen an inside rip move, which is just, I mean, pretty self-explanatory. He's ripping to the inside. So if I'm rushing against the right tackle, then I am rushing and I'm ripping with my left arm to the inside of the right tackle, to his left shoulder, and I'm going inside and rushing there. We haven't seen either of those been used often enough or effectively enough to this point for TJ Searcy. And to me, that's a problem. I don't know what it is, if that's what they're being coached to do. And by that, I mean, we've seen instances of defensive players basically go, hey, yeah, they're telling me they want me to use this pass rush move, or they want me to use just these couple pass rush moves. And so I can't do whatever I want. We saw Myles Garrett complained about it a few years ago. I think it was when Jim Schwartz was their defensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. He's like, yeah, they want me to use just these couple pass rush moves. They were like, hey, they gave me 3 pass rush moves I can use, and that's it. And there's reasons for some of them. It's like, hey, we don't want you to use an inside rip because we don't want to give up contain, whatever it may be. There's reasons. I doubt that's the case here. But I need to see TJ Searcy break out the moves that we've seen before. I will also say, TJ Searcy is one of the players that we wrote single game scouting reports for in the spring. And in that, I wrote, he doesn't use his hands enough. He's trying to do the move, or he's just plowing into offensive tackles. He doesn't use his hands enough. And that's something I pointed out during the spring, and it's something that still needs work. You got to be better at hand fighting. And when you have the length that TJ Searcy has, you have to be better at hand fighting, and you have to be more aggressive with your hands. That was the thing. When TJ Searcy, when I wrote the scouting report, I was like, he's got long arms. Like I'd expect at the combine, that's going to be a thing. Whenever he goes to the NFL, that's going to be a thing that NFL teams look at it, they go, okay. And you'll probably see the clickbaity Twitter stuff and whatever about his official wingspan. He's a big dude, broad shoulders, long arms. Wingspan's going to be a big thing for him when people talk about it. But as a pass rusher, he's not effectively using that length right now. And I know he's not a bendy guy around the edge. Okay, he's starkly different from a guy like Princely last year who was very bendy. But Florida seems to have that tendency right now. If they don't want too much, or they're not looking too much for bendy guys, George Gums can do it, but the rest of them are pretty straightforward up and down north-south guys. But TJ Searcy needs to step up as a pass rusher because, again, when you're facing a Georgia, facing a Texas, you need to be able to generate a pass rush without exclusively blitzing. And he needs to be a better part of that than he has been so far to this point. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Florida Gators football for Locked On Gators. I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.